It's the end of training camp, but the big decisions are still to be made as preseason game 2 against the Seattle Seahawks looms for the Broncos. And with the regular season looming, we return for another great season of Broncos Weekend. Welcome to UC Health Training Center, everybody. This is Broncos Weekend. I'm Matt Boyer. Alexis Perry and George Stoia from the Denver Gazette will be along in just a moment. But as always, we start with the Hall of Famer, Steve Atwater. Steve, how we feeling? We're back. Let's like we never left.
Man, we're back. It's a beautiful day. Camp has been going well. No major injuries. Everything is good.
As camp wraps up, give me your top-line thoughts here. Your overall feeling as camp wraps up this week.
I'm super optimistic. I think I'm like this every year, though, but especially this year with the amount of talent that we have on this football team. George Payton, I think, has done a tremendous job over the offseason of just acquiring talent and, super talented guys at each position. And it's just a lot of competition out there, which I think is going to make everyone better.
Camp began and ended with the quarterback battle being the focal point. And while this weekend could decide some of those major decisions for the Broncos, Teddy Bridgewater and Drew Lock are just trying to keep things business as usual.
You just want to keep that momentum going. I said after the game, even though it's an exhibition game, you still want to create a culture around here of winning.
Throws a fade right side, has a receiver there. The catch, and that is a Denver touchdown. A perfect strike on the little quick fade route from Teddy Bridgewater.
Going into this game, we just want to keep momentum, keep scoring, finishing drives in the end zone, trying to get points. The decision will be made, and, we go forward. Whatever decision is made, it's going to be a decision that's, we feel is best for this team. So right now, all I could do is focus on continue to get better as a player every day, being a better teammate.
And that is an 80-yard touchdown pass from Locke to Hambler.
I do think I've shown growth. I'm going to let them decide on if that's enough for me to be the starter. The human nature is to, dive into it, think about it, almost overanalyze sometimes. And that's just humans being humans. And to say that I've never done that in this process, I'd be lying to you. But through the process, you grow, you figure it out, and it really comes down to the basic control you control and worry about yourself and how you can get better and how you can make this team better. And I feel like I can make this team better by being a better me, and that was my main focus going through this.
All right, Steve, everything they said, they're saying the right things, both of the quarterbacks, and we didn't see much separation between the two guys against the Vikings as we take a look at some of those stats. Did we see any separation this week when it came to preparations for the Seahawks, though?
Well, I can't really say in practice. I thought the first day out of practice, both guys looked a little bit off. They were throwing some bad passes, and we dropped a lot of passes, too. This week of practice, it's hard to tell. We really have to tell once the real bullets start flying this weekend. And hopefully it'll be obvious to Broncos country and to us as observers who's the right quarterback, but I think it's going to be much more difficult than we think.
Drew Lock gets the start in Game 1. It's going to be Teddy Bridgewater in Game 2. Where did Lock impress you the most as far as his play? Because for me, the consistency, right? I mean, he's been able to cut down the turnovers, and we've always known that he can play at a high level, but can he do it on a consistent basis? Where have been the biggest strides for him for you so far here?
Well, for me, it was just seeing him go through the progressions, and I saw one time that first receiver was open and he threw it to him, whereas I saw last year sometimes where he'd see that first guy open, but he's like, I want to get a deeper pass in, and then he ended up having to hold it and scramble with the ball. But he threw that first pass, and I think that's something that he may have learned from watching Teddy Bridgewater's game, but he also got through some of the progressions and ended up hitting Jerry Jeudy on the one crossing route there. That was really positive and made me feel good about his progress.
Bridgewater and Locke are both going to have more weapons at their disposal. Head coach Vic Fangio saying after Thursday's practice that we're going to see guys like Garrett Bowles return to the field, possibly. Melvin Gordon might be a game-time decision because he was dealing with a bit of an injury. Steve, 12 to 15 plays, Fangio said. That's what the starters might be looking at. Do you need to see him on the field?
Oh, man, I go back and forth with this, but the way the game has changed now, I just don't know that I do. And especially 12 to 15 plays, guys, they get that out here in practice. They could get it. Now, it won't be live, but, I think you could get your wind and everything out here in practice from that. So I don't know. I think I've gone to the other end to where I feel like you may not need to play your starters in the preseason because we need them ready to go for week 1. But, hey, I know Coach Fangio's got to do it the way he has to do it. And I think it's going to be great however it goes. But for me, I'm just not taking any chances.
On the defensive side of the ball, 58 and 55 are back on the field together again. Von Miller and Bradley Chubb, they look healthy, they look raring to go, and they might be as excited about that fact as we are.
It's something we talk about a lot. We know we've been here going on 4 years, only got a chance to play with each other a full 1 year. So we got that bad taste in our mouths and want to make sure that we do everything in order to maximize this opportunity we both have. We're playing with each other, and we're going to do it big.
Patrick Mahomes is hit, and he will be sacked. And a great job there by Bradley Chubb.
He's a beast. He's continued to take steps. He's continued to get better and better and better. And it's scary to even think about. He just keeps getting better and better and better, and he picks up on everything. And he's jumping the snap count at 275, 280 pounds. He's jumping the snap count. He's big, he's strong, he's fast, he's tough. He's able to fight through injury and all that stuff. That's my right hand man, and I'm excited to play with him. I got to get there a couple of seconds faster to get to these sacks because he's going to be on them for sure.
Ever since I've been here, we haven't had a winning record, and that leaves a sour taste in everybody's mouth, especially with the tradition the Broncos have of making it to the Super Bowls and AFC championships and winning. And we just need to get back to that. Everybody has that same sense of urgency. Losing's not fun. It makes it makes coming in here not as fun. It makes talking to you guys not as fun. We all want to get it back on that winning track, and it's going to start with us up front. It's going to start with the DBs. It's going to start with the offense, and we're going to have to put all that together.
All right, Steve, you said this offseason when we talked, 26.5 sacks is the number.
Make it 27.
It keeps going up, Steve. Every time we talk about this, it keeps going up.
Every time I see these guys, man, I get fired up. 27.
What has impressed you most about the way these guys have played during training camp?
Well, the work ethic that they both have. We know Bradley Chubb's work ethic is off the charts. He tries to push his teammates to get better. Von Miller, the same thing. You see him when he makes a play in the backfield, he runs all the way to the end zone and getting that extra conditioning in. And that's the mindset that he was in last year. He's going to take his game to another level. And, man, he's got that same mindset right now, and I think it's going to happen. As long as we stay healthy, we'll be good.
We've got to take a quick break. When we come back on Broncos Weekend, the rookies were under the bright lights for the first time last week, and they rose to the occasion in a big way. We'll preview which first-year players are in great position to shine again in Seattle. That's next.
Four-man rush. Browning throws a pass right side. Pass is picked off. This is going to be a house call. And welcome to the NFL, Patrick Surtain.
That's just all film study, all recognizing opposing teams' tendencies, and, just getting a knack for the ball. My position coach, Christian Parker, always say when the ball in the air, it should be ours every play. It gives me a ton of confidence, just going out there, getting my feet wet in my first game, just going in and day out just to get better.
Big hole there, and a nice gain on the first down play. That's Javonte Williams, the second-round draft choice out of North Carolina.
It felt good just to get all the butterflies and things out, and getting the first game behind me. So now I know what to expect next, moving forward. If we're gonna keep winning like this, and I'll tell them what we're gonna do in the regular season.
Pass will be caught, and the ball knocked away, incomplete. Caden Stearns was there, so was P.J. Locke.
Feels pretty good, especially playing back there with P.J. Locke. But I think overall we did well and getting involved in a run game and stuff like that. So I'm really proud of how we did, but just keep building on top of that and getting better.
Welcome back to Broncos Weekend. Steve, the rookies, man. PS2, Javonte Williams, they looked good in Game 1. As we think about the rookies here going into Game 2, who do you got your eye on?
Well, one of the guys who we drafted as a linebacker, Baron Browning out of Ohio State. I'm anxious to see this guy play. I was super excited when we got him in the draft. Haven't been able to see him. I want to see him live and in action, show his physicality. And I think at some point throughout the season, he's going to make a difference on this defense in one way or another, whether it be special teams or find a way to crack the roster.
We mentioned Javonte Williams, a couple of guys to keep an eye out for. Jonathan Cooper could be poised to play a lot of snaps, especially if Bradley Chubb and Von Miller don't see the field or are in limited action. Caden Stearns had a nice game against the Minnesota Vikings. So if one of those guys pops, what can that do for their spot on this roster?
Oh, well, I don't think – I think that Caden Stearns, he's got a spot on the roster right now. He went out and showed his physicality, be a super contributor on special teams, punt team, punt return, kickoff return, all those special teams units. He'll be a superstar on that. And the thing I love about Caden Stearns is he's physical all the time. He doesn't turn it on and turn it off. He's that way consistently.
The other big thing that I know a lot of fans in Broncos country want to see this week, some of those veteran free agents. Bobby Massey got some play with the ones in Minnesota. So, Steve, when you're thinking about the guys, the free agent pickups, who do you want to see the most out of those guys?
Man, Bobby Massey more than anything, because with us losing Jawan James, earlier this summer, and then kind of late picking up Bobby Massey. I want to see him go out there and just dominate that right tackle.
He's in a battle right now.
Oh, he's in a battle. Tackle. Oh, yeah, with he and Calvin Anderson. Yes, but I want to see Bobby Massey come out here and just dominate and show that he deserves to be in that place. And if not, hey, it'll be Calvin Anderson. But that's what I'll be watching. I'll be watching that right tackle quite a bit during this next preseason game against the Seahawks.
That Broncos offensive line has looked mighty good through training camp and one preseason game. So again, that running game for the Broncos might be looking pretty sweet. We've got to take a quick break, but when we come back on Broncos Weekend, how much anticipation is there for this team outside the building? Alexis Perry will check in with George Stoia about the QB battle and the Broncos he'll be keeping an eye on in Seattle. That's next. Welcome back to Broncos Weekend, everybody. Expectations and excitement, they are high inside these walls at UC Health Training Center, but how is Broncos country feeling outside these walls? Well, to get the pulse locally of the quarterback battle and who to watch for against the Seahawks, Alexis Perry caught up with George Stoia from the Denver Gazette.
Thanks so much, Matt. George, you have done such a fantastic job covering this team all throughout training camp. So as camp wraps up and we head into preseason game number 2, I have to get your thoughts on where this team stands now that we're about 10 days away from final roster cuts. Of course, we have to start with the quarterback conversation. Vic Fangio said that they're really close to making a decision on the starting quarterback for this season, but they're not quite there yet. So how would you score this competition so far?
You know, it's interesting. I was talking with some of the other media folks, and I think that this is really Drew's competition to lose at this point. I think that you look at his performance against the Vikings last week, the way that he was able to complete the 80-yard touchdown pass, go 5 of 7, 151 yards, whatever it was. And that's not to say Teddy had a bad game. Obviously, he was good as well. But I think when you watch these few practices this week, I think Drew kind of has that edge right now. But it's going to be interesting. I think going into the Seattle game, Vic talked about how important that's going to be when it comes to who's going to be the start. It sounds like we might get an official announcement next week. We'll see. It kind of depends on how those two guys perform this weekend. But I would say right now it's Drew's competition to lose.
Well, Teddy Bridgewater, he will get the start on Saturday in Seattle. What would a successful road trip look like for Bridgewater?
I think he has to find the end zone, right? I mean, I think that's what you want to do as a quarterback, and he's talked about that. I think he's taking the right approach. He's not, talking about himself and how many yards he wants to have and how many touchdowns he wants to have. He just wants to get the offense in the end zone. And when you look at the way that the offense performed with Drew and Teddy last week, that's all they did, right? That's successful. So I think if Teddy can replicate that, what he did last week, and then maybe a little bit more, I think maybe he can tie this thing back up or maybe even take the edge on Drew. But that's what you want to see from Teddy. You also want to see no turnovers. Both those guys had a clean game on Saturday, and I think that's what you want to see again this weekend.
Well, no matter who is at quarterback this season, of course, stout offensive line play will be critical for this team if they want to have success. Obviously, the left side is pretty locked down there with Garrett Bowles and Dalton Reisner, but how's the right side coming along?
I think it's good. I think Graham Glasgow, he's kind of an underrated, type player up there at right guard. I think he's a guy that we don't talk enough about. I feel like he's had a really good camp. You look at the right tackle spot, obviously that's maybe the second biggest battle behind quarterback. Bobby Massey, I feel like he's looked really good, obviously bringing him in from Chicago. You also have, Calvin Anderson, who's, playing that swing tackle spot, which I don't think he gets enough credit for. That's something that's really difficult to do, and you see it almost every single week. He's going left to right, back to right. I mean, it's a really tough thing to do. too. So I think that it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. I know Vic said actually today that that's still an ongoing battle. So it's going to be interesting not only for the quarterbacks on Saturday, but to see who gets that first snap at right tackle and kind of how that progresses, going into the final preseason game next weekend.
Well, like we all know, the wide receivers room is overflowing with talent to the point where there's going to be a guy who is deserving of a roster spot who will not get one this year. So what's your overall assessment of that room? Who's one guy that you think will make the final roster?
It's got to be my guy, Trinity Benson. He's been the guy that I've pointed out since day one. I think it was the first day of training camp. He caught 2 long touchdown passes, and I said, man, who's that guy? And he's really stuck out. He's kept up. And when you're a guy like that who's been on the practice squad the last couple seasons, you have to stand out in practice. And he has done that so far. And then obviously in the game, he has 2 touchdowns against the Vikings. So I think that's the guy. I mean, everybody talks about Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler, Tim Patrick, Cortland Sutton. All those guys are great. But I think Trinity Benson is the one to really watch in that room, especially when you see some guys like Tyreek Cleve and Deontay Spencer. They're kind of on the border, right now. And they're competing for special team spots. And we've seen Trinity out there too. So it's a really interesting room. And that's a good problem to have, right? That's a lot of guys with a lot of depth. So that's kind of my guy. I think Trinity's someone that could maybe surprise people and make this team.
On the defensive side of the ball, who is one bubble guy that you're really keeping an eye on?
That's a good question. I think Jonathan Cooper's one that's really stood out outside linebacker. I know last year I think they took 3 outside linebackers on the original 53-man roster, and right now obviously you have Vaughn and Bradley and Malik Reed are those 3 guys. But let's say they take a 4th one. I think Jonathan Cooper is one of those guys, that 7th-round pick out of Ohio State, that's really impressed me. I mean, he's been living in the backfield during camp. I thought he had a really good game against the Vikings. And then he's competing against guys like Derek Tuska, who has been in the system for a year, and then Andre Mintz, an undrafted rookie out of Vanderbilt that I think has also been impressive. So I think that outside linebacker spot's really interesting, and I think Jonathan Cooper is a guy that's really stood out to me.
Well, lastly, what are your overall impressions of where this team stands about 3 weeks away from the season opener against the New York Giants?
I think, top to bottom, and I feel like we've said this a lot, is the roster's there, right? Like the talent is there with this team, especially when you look at defense. I think this is a top 5 defense in the NFL. You look at the offensive playmakers, like I said, Jeudy, Hamler, those type of guys. But when you have the biggest question mark be at the quarterback position, that's where it's going to come down to. I think that this team can win a lot of games this season, but it's going to depend on what's that quarterback play look like. And if it's better than last season, I think that this is a team that can make the playoffs. I really do. And so it'll be interesting to see. I think the season starts out nicely with them. I think that those first 3 games they should be favored in and probably win those games. And so I think we'll know pretty early, and then they'll get into some tougher tests.
Well, George, thank you so much for your time. If you want more from him, check him out on Twitter at George Stoia or head to the denvergazette.com. George, thank you so much. Matt, back up to you.
Thank you very much, Alexis. Okay, Steve, this is usually the part of the show where we go keys to the game, but it's preseason, okay?
Preseason.
Wins and losses, it's about getting good work. It's not about the wins and losses, right? So in order to get that good work, come home feeling good after 2 preseason games, what do the Broncos need to do?
Well, first off, Teddy Bridgewater, he's going to get the start. I'd like to see him come out, be consistent, complete a lot of passes like he did in the last game. I want to see him push the ball down the field a little bit. I think we all want to see him push the ball down the field. We've seen it in practice, but I like to see him do that in the game and show everyone that he has the arm that everyone thinks that he doesn't have. Also, on the defensive side, Baron Browning, again, we'll get a chance to see him for the first time this preseason in some real action. I want to see that physicality that I saw at Ohio State. And back to the offense at the right tackle position, Bobby Massey just going out there dominating and playing that right tackle position the way that they played last week, and just having a good game.
For me, it's those rookies. Who's going to pop? Is it going to be Jonathan Cooper for the outside linebackers? Is it going to be Caden Stearns or Jamar Johnson? Which rookie is going to step up and solidify their spot on the depth chart? That is what I will be looking for. But that's going to do it for us today on Broncos Weekend. Special thanks to Alexis Perry. For the Hall of Famer Steve Atwater, I'm Matt Boyer. So long, Broncos country. We will see you on game day.